The first snow came early that year, dusting the Montana plains in white by mid-October. Sarah Mitchell watched it fall through the window of her father's general store, thinking about the bachelor rancher who'd turned down 3 marriage proposals in as many months. Everyone in Copper Creek knew about Tom Whitmore. He was 32, owned the largest spread in the county, and had a face weathered by sun and wind that somehow made him more handsome than any smooth-faced city boy. Women had been throwing themselves at him since he'd arrived 5 years ago with enough money to buy the old Henderson Ranch outright. He'd built it up from near ruin into something prosperous, working dawn to dusk with barely a word to anyone. Sarah had watched the parade of hopefuls. First there was Rebecca Thornton, the banker's daughter, all blonde curls and practiced smiles. She'd invited Tom to 3 church socials before finally asking him outright to marry her. He'd tipped his hat politely and said no thank you ma'am, like she'd offered him a second helping of potatoes. Then came Mary Sue Patterson, who everyone said was the prettiest girl in 3 counties. She'd ridden out to his ranch with a basket of fried chicken and her best dress on. Came back 2 hours later, basket untouched, face red from crying. The third was widow Eleanor Hayes, who was practical and kind and ran her late husband's farm with more sense than he ever had. She'd approached it sensibly, explaining how their land adjoined and a marriage would benefit them both. Tom had listened respectfully and declined just as respectfully. After that, the women of Copper Creek threw up their hands. Let him freeze alone in that big ranch house, they said. Pride comes before a fall, they said. He'll be sorry come January when he's eating beans from a can and talking to his horses. Sarah had never paid it much mind. She was 26, considered a spinster by local standards, and preferred it that way. She read books ordered from Chicago, helped run her father's store, and didn't much care what people thought. She'd seen Tom Whitmore plenty of times when he came in for supplies, always polite, always alone, paying in cash and never lingering to gossip. But she'd noticed things others hadn't. She'd noticed how he always bought good coffee, the expensive kind, which meant he appreciated quality. She'd noticed he bought books sometimes, tucked them under his arm like he was embarrassed to be caught wanting them. She'd noticed the careful way he handled things, like someone who understood that everything had value. November came in cold and mean. Sarah's father took sick with pneumonia, and suddenly she was running the store alone while nursing him at night. She was exhausted, worried, and had no patience left for foolishness. That's when Tom Whitmore came in for his monthly supplies. She was checking his list when he cleared his throat. Miss Mitchell, I was wondering if I might speak with you about a matter of some delicacy. Sarah looked up, tired enough to be sharp. If you're about to propose marriage, Mr. Whitmore, I'd appreciate you getting to the point. I've got inventory to finish. He actually smiled, which transformed his whole face. Word travels, I see. You've turned down half the eligible women in the county. Yes, word travels. She went back to his list, checking items off. Let me guess. You want to know if I have any single friends or relatives who might be interested. I don't, and even if I did, I'd warn them off after watching your track record. I deserved that. He shifted his weight, and Sarah realized he was actually nervous. Tom Whitmore, who'd once faced down a grizzly bear with nothing but a rifle and nerve, was nervous talking to her. Truth is, Miss Mitchell, I came to ask if you might consider. That is, if you'd be willing to. Spit it out, Mr. Whitmore. I haven't got all day. Would you marry me? Sarah's hand froze on the bag of flour she'd been weighing. She looked up slowly. You're joking. No, ma'am. I'm in earnest. She set down the flour with great care, then crossed her arms. Let me understand this. You've refused 3 perfectly lovely women, and now you're asking me, the town spinster who just snapped at you like a rabid dog. You're not a spinster. You're a woman with sense. He met her eyes steadily. And you didn't snap at me. You were honest, which is more than most people are. Why? Sarah demanded. Why refuse them and ask me? Tom took off his hat, running his hand through his dark hair. Because they wanted romance. They wanted to be swept off their feet, wanted pretty words and courtship. I'm not built for that, Miss Mitchell. I'm a rancher. I work hard, I keep my word, And I don't have time for poetry and flower picking. And you think I don't want those things? I think you're practical enough to see the value in a partnership without needing all the frills. He turned his hat in his hands. Your father's sick. You're running this store alone. Winter's coming hard, and you're wearing yourself to the bone. I'm offering a solution that benefits us both. Sarah felt anger kindle in her chest. That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard, and I've read about it happening to 3 other women. I never claimed to be romantic. No, you claim to be honest, so let me be honest back. Sarah leaned forward on the counter. You want a wife or just someone to cook your meals and warm your bed through the winter? The question hung in the air between them like gun smoke. Tom's jaw tightened, and for a moment Sarah thought he'd turn and walk out. Instead, he set his hat on the counter and looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. I want a wife, he said quietly. I want someone to build something with. Someone who'll tell me when I'm being a fool, who'll work beside me, who'll make that big empty house feel like a home instead of just a place I sleep. I want someone who reads books and has opinions and doesn't simper or pretend to be something they're not. He paused. I want someone like you, Sarah Mitchell. Not a housekeeper. Not a winter convenience. A partner. Sarah's anger faltered. He'd used her first name, and the way he said it felt different from how anyone else did. But she wasn't about to make this easy. And if I said yes, what exactly would this partnership look like? Honest work for honest pay. The ranch would be half yours, legal and proper. You'd have say in all decisions. I'd help with your father until he's well, help you run the store if you wanted to keep it. We'd build something together, equal shares. And the other aspects of marriage? Tom's face reddened slightly, but he didn't look away. I'd hope we'd grow into that naturally. I'm not asking you to love me, Sarah. I'm asking you to give us a chance to see if we could. She studied him for a long moment. Tom Whitmore, the man who'd refused every eligible woman in the county, was standing in her father's store proposing the most honest, unglamorous, and somehow compelling marriage she'd ever heard of. Why did you really refuse the others? She asked softly. He met her eyes. Because Rebecca wanted a rich husband to show off. Mary Sue wanted to be rescued from boredom. Eleanor wanted security and companionship, which was honest enough, but there was no spark there, nothing to build on. None of them saw me, Sarah. They saw the ranch, or the money, or the idea of being married. He picked up his hat. You look at me and see a person. That's rarer than you'd think. Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Outside, snow was falling harder now. Her father was sick. Winter was coming. She was exhausted and scared and so tired of being alone. But that wasn't why she said yes. She said yes because Tom Whitmore had looked at her, really looked at her, and seen someone worth asking. Not the desperate spinster, not the shopkeeper's daughter, not the last resort. He'd seen Sarah, with all her sharp edges and book learning and impatience, and he'd wanted that. All right, she said. I'll marry you, Tom Whitmore. But I have conditions. Name them. I keep reading my books, and I keep helping run the store even after Father's well. I want a real marriage, built on respect and honesty, not just convenience. And if either of us decides this isn't working, we talk about it like adults instead of suffering in silence. Agreed. He extended his hand, and she shook it. His palm was calloused and warm. When? Soon. Before the heavy snows come. They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church. The town buzzed with gossip. Some said she'd trapped him. Others said he'd finally gotten desperate. A few whispered that it wouldn't last the winter. But on their wedding night, in the big ranch house that had been so empty, Tom built up the fire and made coffee the good kind while Sarah unpacked her books. They sat in comfortable silence, and when he finally reached for her hand, it felt natural. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For seeing past what everyone else saw. For being brave enough to say yes. Sarah squeezed his hand. Thank you for asking the right question. Outside, the Montana wind howled and snow piled against the windows. But inside, There was warmth and coffee and the beginning of something real. Not romance, not yet, but something potentially stronger. Partnership, respect, and the honest possibility of love. Spring came eventually, as it always did, and with it came the gossips checking to see if the odd marriage had survived. What they found was Tom and Sarah Whitmore working side by side, building something neither could have built alone, proving that sometimes the best love stories start not with poetry and flowers, but with one honest question and one brave answer.